Welcome to the first episode of the Bassline podcast. Our guest this week is Jitsu. You can catch him Friday the 26th at Yeti with me, Jay Brown, and then playing Saturday with Turk at the Be Yourself monthly at Hey Mambo.
That's right.
I really enjoy the Hey Mambo thing. You know, it's just a different experience. You know, it's great house music, but it doesn't feel like you're at a venue. It really feels like more of just like a house show.
Right, yeah. That's kind of what we go for, you know. It's small vibe, but, you know, good house music and, you know, kind of a family feel.
More of an intimate thing.
Right.
Hands down my favorite monthly gig.
Yeah.
That's the one show every month. I'm like, oh, dude, clear my schedule. I'm going to Hey Mambo.
Yeah.
So much fun.
And it's always the last Saturday of the month, right?
Right, that's right.
How long have you guys been doing that?
We've been doing that probably it's been over a year. We took a little break, a short break, but then, went back to doing it. So it's a little over a year.
I feel like you guys came back in with it right at the right moment because, like, the other house gigs that kind of fell apart there for a second, and then all of a sudden, like, Hey Mambo's back, and we're like, oh, thank God someone's picking up the slack.
Right.
So thank you, Jitsu.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about Friday? What are you going to play? What are you going to do?
Probably going to play just some good house, probably a little more upbeat, you know, not too deep, but probably a little bit of deep house. Kind of mix it up a little bit.
A little banjo.
Just kind of see what kind of crowd we get, but yeah.
I think you should play castanets through the whole set.
Yeah, I might work that in, yeah.
I'll sign on for that job.
Can we have ribbon dancers too?
I'm still trying to figure out which direction I want to take.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to get as crazy as I normally do, but I say that, then get me a couple drinks in me, and I'll probably just lose it and do it anyways. But
you know, and that's a good point. I used to like really plan out my set before a gig, and then I would get there, and it's like, no, that's just not gonna fit, you know. And so I got to where it was a waste of time to plan out a set, so I really don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
Do you organize your tracks in specific ways so you know where to meet up?
I don't. Unfortunately, I'm pretty bad at organizing music. So, and you know, when I used to play all vinyl, I memorized what the song was by the album cover and the art on it.
Oh,
so I never really memorized the names. So when I started playing digital, it was like, oh shit, now I got to memorize all these names and organize all this music accordingly. And so yeah, I'm pretty bad at that.
So you started on vinyl then?
Right.
Absolutely.
When was that?
That was 1990, early 97.
Okay. What was
96.
the inspiration for you to start heading that way?
I lived in Hawaii at that time, and I had some friends that were involved with running a club there in Waikiki, and I ended up getting involved with the club and just kind of got into the music. Had one of the DJs there show me how you do it and kind of got me started, and then from there it was just a lot of practice. And
so is that did you play music beforehand or anything like that?
No, I really didn't.
Just...
I wish, you know, because like both my grandmothers had pianos in their homes and they played, and I really wished that they had tried to teach me because, you know, but when you're a young boy, you're really not that interested in that kind of thing. But in hindsight, I wish I had that background, you know.
It's never too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even Pete the other day is picking up piano now. I was really surprised at that.
True.
Yeah. I was like, man, you've been DJing for years, and now you're deciding to pick it up. I'm proud of you.
Well, he's picking up because his daughter's learning. And he's looking at his daughter going, what are you doing? And so he's like,
So what exactly does a background in piano help you do as a DJ as far as...
I don't think it really helps too much as a DJ, but since I've been kind of moving into the production side of music, it would really help in that regard there.
Well,
okay.
I think it would also establish a little bit more of like theory and composition and even keys.
Yeah,
and knowing where to follow.
Mixing tunes in key, yeah, it would definitely help in that.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you mix in key?
I try, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was the big thing.
I mean, a lot of people don't know about that, but I've been playing at gigs when I've had people come in that weren't really into the house music scene that just happened to stumble into the place, and you know, when I switched off to the other DJ and they grabbed me and said, hey, how do you guys do this? And I explained what we're doing, just kind of in a nutshell. And I think the lady actually was a music teacher or some background in music, and she brought up the point, well, don't you guys have to do that in key?
Yeah.
And that was, you know, it's a good point. A lot of people don't understand that's really ideal to mix in key, but it's not that many people do
It's
it.
definitely ideal, but a lot of those tracks are designed in a way where it starts primarily with drums and ends primarily with drums, so that
Sure.
But there's still a psychological thing behind it, and that was the thing I came across too. It was like, you know, I've only been doing this for like 4 years, and so I'm like trying to figure out how to do it, you know, and I'm learning a lot about it, and the mixing in key was a big thing. So I started going, okay, started getting into that, try to understand that a little better, and then, you know, coming to like, you know, I was talking to Pete Dorr, and I was like, you know, oh yeah, the mixing in key thing. He looked at me, he's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you've been doing this for how long, and you don't mix in key? And then I realized how many people I talked to that don't mix in key. And then I just watch them play, and they're so good with their EQs and their layering that they don't need to do that.
Yeah,
they can get away
true.
without doing it.
Yeah.
And that's a gift. Like, that's amazing. But then, if you go into the whole psychology of doing the keys and stuff, like, you know, you raise up, you know, or you lower down, you can really affect people subconsciously, emotionally and stuff. It's very fascinating.
Well, and to be fair, I think, at least for me, learning the DJ ropes, nobody ever mentioned mixing in key. It just wasn't something that was really talked about until much later, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, from my perspective, it doesn't seem to be something that's taught from one DJ to the next.
I don't think it is. I think you're right. But coming from that direction and not having that idea and mixing tracks that could potentially train wreck based on the key and being able to mix those, I mean, that's a skill. That's a great skill to have.
Sure.
So mixing in key is it's basically ending your last track and then starting the next one, and that same.
Well, you know, in music theory, you've got, you know, a scale. You know what I mean? You start with an A, and I'm gonna badger this because I don't know what comes next. I don't have it memorized, but so you would start in one key, and so you would bring in based on the scale, you would bring in the next track like a step up or step down.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
it's so they're not the same note, but you know, based because they're in the same scale, that they would blend.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish we had a piano here. It'd be a lot easier to hear that than to explain it. But there's different types of scales. Like there's majors and minors, and like kind of like if you're on a piano, if you hit two keys at the same time that are exactly next to each other, there's this weird dissonance that happens, and it kind of doesn't feel good for your ear. But if you separate them by one, like one key in the middle, like now they kind of work together. The vibrations, the frequencies kind of work together in this nicer way. And so like just avoiding the clash of harmonics and stuff, it can help.
Yeah.
I see.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the weird thing too, the interesting thing about an artist doing it is so much of this music is very emotional and very subconscious. You know, so if a DJ were to clash keys together, there would be that dissonance, and it's not like the audience would go, that was out of key. They would just go, that was weird, and they subconsciously they separate themselves from the music, and they kind of start walking off and going, well, I'll get a drink now. It's the same way if, like, you know, if you hear a DJ that doesn't beat match, and they just train wreck right between them. Like, they're all dancing and have a good time. As soon as that weird drum beat comes over, they start kind of going, I lost the beat, and they stop.
It totally throws them off.
Absolutely. And they'll stop and go, I think I need a beer.
But at the same time, I feel like it could be used to your advantage at times to mix not in key, because you're building a tension, and then once you release it, like, it's beat-driven music.
Right.
Definitely. And so, like, you give them this nasty thing for a second, and then, like, when you drop it out and, like, go back into just one song, like, all of a sudden now it's into a groove that they're ready to be dancing on again.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, but I also think that it would take an extremely skilled DJ to pull that off. And 99% of what you hear like that is not a skilled DJ doing that. It's just a DJ that doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So can you do that?
You know, it's funny. I've seen DJs do that. They say, you know, watch this. I'm going to clear the dance floor, and they'll throw something on, you know, do something different, and then they're like, watch this, and then they'll throw something else on and get everybody back out. They're just, you know, to watch the control over the place like that.
Just somebody to
That's a lot.
understand.
Yeah,
Then
that's
you get
not
into where the DJ wants, or the bartenders, they want to make a little more money, so they come over and say, "Hey, clear the dance floor, get everybody over to the bar."
Right.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
That's
I didn't know that.
interesting.
when you're playing in a bar, I always figured that was part of the mindset that you're looking for. Is like you don't want people on the floor the whole night because the bar's got to make money.
Sure, yeah.
And do you think that way when you're playing that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
So you like attention.
Well, no, it'd be the difference of being like one of those DJs that's playing for 5 hours, in a place that's just providing interesting, fun pop or top 40 or some that kind of music. You're that kind of DJ versus like if you're playing a house DJ, you're not up there necessarily for the bar. You're up there for the art of it, and it's a whole different animal.
Sure.
So do you feel like the music you were playing in '97 is different from what you're doing now, and like how so?
I don't know that I would say it's different. I would say the production is a little different because a good example, I was listening to some of my DJ mixes from 10 years ago, and I was using all vinyl, but of course that's analog, and then I listen to my mixes nowadays, and just looking at each one on an EQ in comparison, it's like a world of difference,
Yeah.
How so?
Just the old mixes from 10 years ago using all vinyl, analog, they didn't hit very hard, like what the digital stuff does today.
It's not as compressed.
I think it has to do with the analog to digital, just the difference in those two.
Right
is
on.
what it boils down to.
Do you still mix in vinyls with your
That's
sets
a
anymore?
sore subject.
No,
That's a
I
very sore
don't. Actually, I
subject.
still have all my vinyl. I can't get rid of it, but I don't play it. I have dubbed some of it over to MP3s or to Wave. But, that's a lot of work and you can't just record it over and it sounds good. You've got to work on it, process it, EQ it to get it to where it sounds good.
So you still sad that you sold your decks?
I am,
That's what I
yeah.
was gonna say. That's why I said
I
that's
never-
way to bring that up.
I did.
Justin.
I sold my turntables. I never used them. I'll
yeah.
probably buy some more,
Yeah.
and probably not ever use them. But
Right,
But
yeah.
at least you'll have some.
But,
if you
yeah,
I'll
have
decide
them.
to.
It'll make your home look that much.
yeah.
How do you feel? Because you have been doing this for so long. How do you feel? Being that old school vinyl DJ and coming into the digital world and whatnot. Because there's a lot of mixed feelings.
Was that
I'll
a
say
smooth
You're right.
transition for you?
No,
or
not
did
at
you
all.
hold off as long as possible?
No, that is a good point. Is there's the purists out there that and I was kind of one of them. I kind of went kicking and screaming into the digital age.
But your back's better because you don't have to carry the crates.
Absolutely, but there's people to do that for you. Yeah.
If you're good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I went kicking and screaming. Like I said, I used to know the music based on the album covers, and digital world, that's different. You don't really have that, and so there's that. But it's kind of a different art form from a turntable and vinyl. But what I did was I kind of eased into it, where I went to Tractor and using Final Scratch back then when that was the thing.
Okay, yeah.
And that kind of helped, because I still used vinyl and I still used my turntables. And
What
I could-
year is this?
let's see, that was
when did that
about
come out?
2008. 2007 is when I was using it.
So that's when you went from vinyl to digital, more or
Right.
less.
Toying around
Right.
with it.
that
And
time
then, I didn't do that for very long, probably a year and a half. And then I bought some CDJ 1000s around 2008, 9. And those things are the best. I mean, they have a really good feel to them. It's kind of a vinyl-ish,
Yeah.
So, and they're pretty much the industry standard they were then. Of course, there's newer versions now, but
Yeah.
they have a really good feel. It's a good transition to go with those.
And see, that's how I felt about coming into this too. Is I always looked at the whole digital and technological age as like, this is just a new medium,
Sure.
and I had a lot of arguments about that. And they were like, no, because I mean I get it because we come up with software and stuff, and it makes it so easy for just people who don't know what they're doing to just push a few buttons and mimic what everybody did back in the day on vinyl without really understanding the art form, the beat matching, the key matching, all this kind of stuff. They're just pushing buttons. And I get that, but I was kind of saw this in a new medium as like, okay, where can we take this? what else can we do? What's new? How can we change things? But
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I hear today from other DJs that are using controllers and laptops and these are guys that came from vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, they know how to use vinyl. They know how to beat match and use records and, you know, but what they're saying to me is, well, you know, I don't have to spend time doing that now. Now I can just have the software sync the tunes for me, and I can move on to doing all these other effects and kind of a remix on the fly, if you will,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing. So, yeah, I can understand that argument. I still think it looks kind of funny to see a DJ up there that, you know, it isn't really DJing in the traditional sense, but I think that's just kind of, that changes over time.
Yeah.
But, you know, the people on the dance floor, they don't care if you're playing off an iPad, you know, record, whatever. They just don't care as long as
what
you're,
comes through the speakers.
as long as you're doing what they like. So.
Well, and that was my argument too, about, you know, everybody, like the old schoolers versus the new schoolers and stuff like that. And we were so mad because now we were just flooded the market with DJs. And I'm like, well, but still, you know, if you know what you're doing, if you know the theory, if you know beat matching, key matching, if you understand the art, you're going to produce things differently. And you're going to stand out. I don't care if there's 1,000 DJs and there's one that knows what the fuck they're doing. That person's going to shine. People are subconsciously and emotionally going to pick that guy out because he's the way he's putting things together. So I was kind of got irritated with the whole, you know, everybody's a DJ, fuck off. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, the whole remixing on the fly thing, that I was reading an interview with Panpot recently, and that's what they were saying. Everything's leaning more towards now for them,
Sure.
is they do
Yeah.
live remixes of the tracks they're playing.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
they know how to get a bunch of people onto a floor. Like,
Well, and that's kind of funny because in the old days when the vinyl DJs, you had to really use the EQ to switch it up and make it sound different. And, you know, from one gig to the next, like, oh, I didn't play the song the same. I'm EQing it different, adding a different tune on with it. And anymore, you don't, you know, you've got software to help you with that. And you remix on the fly from gig to gig, and it's completely different, you know?
Yeah.
no one knows your track.
So, what would you say? You're mainly play house music?
I do. You know, I get a little burned out. I used to play a lot of breakbeat, which was a lot of fun. I love breakbeat, but I'm pretty much just consistently house, you know. It's universal. You can pretty much play house anywhere. You know, you're limited on where you can play things like drum and bass or breakbeat.
Right.
You know, it's just, the house pretty much fits just about anywhere.
That's true.
You know?
That's nice. I mean,
It is nice.
I've always liked music to me that I find timeless. And I'm always like looking for tracks that is like, man, I don't care what year it came out. If it's still good today and it feels like it will be good in 10 more years or something, that should be the music that we're playing. Like, but
Sure.
at the same time, like, I totally understand the niche scenes, and yeah, let's have our hardcore scene. And
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are diehard fans. It's just they're not everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how many fads we really go through over the years, and we always, like, you know, house has always been here, and it doesn't go away. And there was a lot of, you know, even aggression with the whole dubstep and trap thing, and it was like, oh, this is going to ruin everything. I'm like, no, it won't. It'll be gone here in like a year, and we'll be back to house. What are you complaining about? That's the way it always works.
Yeah.
Well, you don't make as much money for a year.
I'm not sure. What exactly is breakbeat?
You know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not like a house music is a 4-on-4, just, you know, beat. Breakbeat, the beat is kind of broken up. It's a broken beat. You know, that's where you get breakbeat. So, you know, you can definitely tell the difference between a house beat, a 4-on-4, and a breakbeat.
Right.
Okay.
And usually breakbeat's a little faster than house. Isn't it
that's
about
right.
like 150?
It doesn't have to be, but most
Generally
of the
it's
time
a little faster,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'd say probably
140?
You know, no, probably 130,
135.
128. You know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was thinking, okay, never mind. I was thinking it was faster. I don't know what I'm thinking of now. Never mind.
It's pretty much kind of a slowed down drum and bass,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
which, you know,
Makes a
drum
little
and
bit
bass
more
pretty
sense.
fast.
I saw some awesome videos recently they took Gabber, the music.
I wouldn't call it music.
A lot of people probably wouldn't, but they took Gabber and they slowed it way the fuck down. and all of a sudden it sounds good.
All of a sudden.
And then it was matched up with people that are doing the gabber dance moves, which is really just seizuring. And they slowed down their dances too. I was like, wow, you're not dancing that bad, and this music doesn't sound that gross anymore. I can deal with it. Like, but you don't consider gabber music?
You know, I'm not gonna hate on the genre. I'm just kind of kidding on that, but because not everybody likes house music, so everybody likes different genres. So you really shouldn't bag on one or the other. It's it's subjective. It's a preference. But I personally don't like gabber. No.
I'm not a big gabber.
You kind of have to just go, it's
is.
not my thing.
Right,
it's
right.
for
I've never
somebody
even heard
else.
of that.
Yeah.
How's that possible?
Gabber is
never heard of
just
that.
insanely high BPMs
Yeah.
with ridiculous music behind it. It's like you take like a hardcore techno
It's some
and
happy
then
hardcore.
make them do more drugs that are uppers.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
I
and
don't
it's
like
just-
the sound of that already.
Very interesting way of putting it.
You probably have chest pains just listening to it.
Okay.
I think my heart stopped.
Yeah, cardiac arrest in
It sounds
30
stressful.
seconds.
It does.
You got to be on the right drugs, I think, to enjoy that music. It's a little beyond me.
Yeah. And you know, I like techno too. I mean, I love to play techno, but you're limited on where you can play something like that. But you know, you've got to play the gig. You know, for example, if I got booked at an after hours, you know, I might play techno or something a little more upbeat because at 2, 3 in the morning in an after hours joint, you got to play to the crowd. You got to play a little more upbeat.
Well, anymore, I
Yeah.
feel like there's a really big crossover between techno and house. There's a lot of tech house stuff out there that is it house or is it techno? Is that a line we're really still drawing?
It's really blurring.
It is. The lines have blurred a lot, and I think there's too many subgenres too. It's gotten ridiculous.
It's
you
a
know,
little-
not
Because
everything.
We have to label everything.
Not everything has to fit in a little neat spot. You know what I mean? It can just be house or techno or whatever.
In an ideal
just
world,
That's a good point.
we wouldn't have genres, right? Like,
Yeah, I know,
it's
yeah.
music and it's
Yeah.
good or not
we have to
interesting
have
to
a-
me.
We have to have a way of labeling something. We can't just go, did you hear that
Yeah.
music? We I think ineartly want to put things in boxes and like,
totally.
compartmentalize and stuff. But
Well, and it started with Adam naming all those damn animals.
oh,
Like,
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Get out of here.
I
Get out
would've
of here.
just
You're
called
done.
them
You're
2
done.
legs, 4 legs. We're good.
All right,
Wings.
first episode, 20 minutes in, he's already been voted off the island.
Wow, it
Leave
didn't
now.
take long. It did not take
I'm
long.
gonna finish my drink.
Absolutely. We'll allow that.
No, but coming back into that, like, there's a lot of stuff that I like to goof around on, and like when we do a show, you know, we have like the 4 sets, like we start it and next person, and you know, we go through, it revolve to, you know,
sure.
I always like to do that first one. It's just doing fuck all, whatever I want to, and experimenting and having fun with different genres because nobody's paying attention yet to the last 2. You really have to hit about like 11:30 midnight before anybody really starts paying attention.
Sure. Yeah,
so.
that's true. True. Yeah.
You feel like it's true that nobody's paying attention?
No. He agrees that it's true that nobody's paying attention to me when I start, but
Right.
You mean around 9 o'clock?
I wouldn't say
Now,
that.
when Jitsu starts,
yeah,
he's
then
like,
it's a whole different
Everybody's
ballgame.
all eyes on
Yeah.
I'm
Jitsu.
going to get their
Yeah.
feet tapping.
He starts with
And
the
then
slow toe tap.
they're going to start wiggling their knee.
It slowly moves up their body.
Oh, Jesus.
So do you think it's actually better to end the night in a scenario like that as the last?
Well, in my mind, you kind of want to build up the night, but you know, like in the old days, you would build the night up. You would start out early in the evening playing like some good deep house or some trip hop or some down tempo, and you kind of progressively build up the night. You start picking up the pace until you're, you know, playing more like the big room stuff in the peak hour, you know, peak hour stuff.
Okay.
But, you know, it doesn't always have to be that way. But, you know, when you say that, when you're going to start the night out that way and build it up throughout the night, you're kind of assuming that the crowd's going to be there for that whole thing.
Exactly.
And they're not. They're not going to be there. You're going to get people like to go out late. You know, people come out later, midnight or so. They're not going to get that early parts, and they're not going to see that progression, you know.
Well, that makes sense.
And the other difficult thing is too is like when you're playing with other people, and I've had this happen to me a couple of times where I've talked to them ahead of time. I'm like, okay, let's do something like this. You know, we'll slowly build it up to where at the end of the night, whatever, you know, we'll hand off and whatnot, and then you know, build up the crowd, and I hand off to somebody and plays trap, and I'm like, Oh,
Why did you do
Well,
that? Yeah.
Well, that
and that's
didn't
funny
work.
because a lot of people don't do that. They just think, well, if I get booked and I'm the early DJ, that's my time to shine. So I'm going to go and I'm going to bang it out. So it's like 10 o'clock. People there just kind of, they haven't had a lot to drink
Yeah.
yet. And all of a sudden you're
they're
just
sipping on
banging
the
it out,
first beer.
130 beats a minute.
It's just too much.
It's probably not going to
Right.
reach them, really, you know?
Yeah,
They're
that's
not
why a
ready
lot of
for
people
that.
just run from the dance floor. It's too
Yeah.
much. You do have to progress with the hour of the night. Like you
Yeah,
can't give them
for
too
sure.
much before they've had a few drinks and like getting
Yeah.
into it. You know. But you have to be careful of like what the other person's playing. If you know you're going after somebody else and they really kind of built you up and whatnot,
sure.
and just don't drop the ball on
Yeah,
playing
absolutely.
something left field.
Yeah, and that does happen. Yeah, I've seen that.
But the other thing is too, going back to what you're saying, there's a lot of people, like a lot of openers that do want to be like, this is my time to shine, and it's
Sure.
like, you know, we all take turns headlining and all that kind of stuff. But like as an opener, you kind of want to like build up for the guy, that's gonna
Yeah.
just drop it at the peak nights.
Yeah.
You don't want to just go balls out and then hand it to him and go follow that. It's like it's kind of a respectable
Well, that's
thing,
true.
You're absolutely right.
So
If you're the opener too for like a headliner, you don't want to try to outshine them.
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
There's
no.
there's an art for opening. There really is.
There really
I think,
is. Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Getting the crowd ready and getting them peaked so that the next guy can come on and kill it.
Yeah.
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 I respect your elders or whoever's headlining. I definitely understand the concept of people coming and going from a bar, and that may change what you're doing for the night. But with you having DJ'd since '97, are you seeing people react to things differently in this age than you did before?
I think, yeah. I mean, of course, the generational change, they react differently because now it seems like when you go, at least to our current geographical location, a lot of the generation that goes out for dance music, they think, for example, some of the stuff around here maybe that they're going out hearing is house music, but that's really not house music. It's,
right.
So
I was actually
I think
talking
the
more of like the
generations
EDM and-
change, and what they like and how certain genres affect them. I think that absolutely changes each generation. Yeah.
I was talking to a guy who's actually my age. He's like 26, 27-ish, just a few nights ago. And we were talking about music for a second, and I mentioned that I like electronic music mostly now. And he's like, oh, yeah, dubstep. I was like, well, that's not really my thing. But he's like, I just call all dance music dubstep, and I call it EDM, but that's all I call it. Like, if it's danceable, that's what I call it. I was like, well, I'm a little more picky.
Yeah.
That's just...
Well, and I can see that because, like, for example, people that aren't really into rock music don't realize they just call everything rock, that there's so many different subgenres of rock, too.
That's true.
It's kind of the same deal. But back in my day, electronic dance music was all of it. It was house, techno, trance, drum bass, all that. It was just the name for all of those. But now it seems to have taken on that it's its own genre.
Well, kind of like indie did.
Yeah.
Indie was originally for independent artists,
Yeah.
but then it became a whole style.
Yeah,
It was
like a
like,
whole
we're
sound.
an indie band.
Yeah.
Well, EDM too is interesting because there's a lot of house aspects, but then you break off into these trance, aspects, and you have like it's really a strange thing. The composition's very strange. It's almost like a pop song built in
Yeah.
house with some trance mixed
That's true.
into it. You know what I
it's
mean?
kind of a
Like,
commercial.
yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But no, going back to talking about our geographical location.
Yes.
I love that. What I find the issue here is, people don't go out to listen to the DJs and listen to the music. Here they just go out to their favorite club and hope the music doesn't suck. And that's been kind of a disturbing fact for me. You know what I mean? It's like you should be going up because certain DJs are playing and follow them from venue to venue, but people don't leave their venues.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a strange thing
It
to
is
me.
interesting how that happens here.
It is, yeah. I've noticed
know?
like the good popular club here. I'm gonna not name names, but in my view, for example, that place is just packed every weekend, and it doesn't have really much to do with the music. I think it's like that. It's just a built-in crowd of they can go there, get trashed, and it's
Right.
just bang our head on the wall with some shitty music.
Right.
And I mean, it's really not about people there to hear good music.
It's
Well,
one of
but-
those spots that they've created an identity as a club.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's
But
important, you know. That's what they're there to do, is to make money. And
They're-
they're doing it well.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
doing it definitely well. But I liked the idea of having an identity as a DJ as well.
Yeah, and it
Absolutely,
should
yeah.
happen. But and I'll
That's
even
what we want, but that's not what venue owners want. They're in the
Right.
business to
They're
make
out to make
money, and I
money,
get
right.
that. That's totally acceptable. I understand
But-
that.
but-
But we're DJs, and we're more on the music side. you
But
know.
but why does this have to be different from like a band? When people go hear bands, they go to hear the band, and when the band plays, they're right there focused on them. Like
Yeah.
because we're DJs, that's not a thing.
I think it's because of the live element of the band. You know, people up there watching, being interested, whereas people nowadays just think, oh, the DJ's just up there hit and play. So
Yeah.
they're not as enamored as a band with all these guys playing instruments.
And I get really irritated with that. You know, everybody thinks that what we're doing is just pressing play, and we do
Yeah.
so much more than that. We hit stop 2 every once in a while, and that's a big thing people don't give us
Yeah.
credit for.
Applause to you, sir.
But no,
That's hilarious.
One thing that I realized, you know, coming from rock and roll for 15 years and then getting into this, it was a huge change for me. I was, you know, the front man for a lot of different bands and stuff like that. I'm so used to having that, you know, connection with people, like right
Yeah.
there, being right there. And then all of a sudden, you know, I got into electronic music because I couldn't find, you know, anybody serious enough to keep doing music. It's something I could do by myself. And I get up there and I do it. And I'm like, I felt so separated being behind those decks. And I realized,
Yeah.
like, the whole thing about DJs is you're not supposed to be noticed. That's the weirdest thing ever. Like, if people notice you, it means you train wrecked. It means you fucked up.
yeah, that's
like,
true. That's true.
So, and that's a different aspect, too, is, you know, rock and roll, you're supposed to be there, you're supposed to be noticed. DJ, you're not supposed to be noticed. And I think that's kind of a bad thing, too.
Well, I think another big difference, though, is when you're in a rock band, you go out and play a show, but you're playing the exact same songs that everybody knows
Yeah.
already.
And you're not going to be remixing on the fly.
And
Right.
hell no, yeah. Well, unless you're like
But-
a jam band or
Yeah,
depending
you
on
can
who
do
you're playing with, you
different-
could.
Yeah, you
but
could.
Let's go back in time, though, real quick.
how far?
Let's go a little back in
How
time before the internet, before anything.
I'm too young for that.
When DJs, you know, had to go out to, you know, find the records and scout the records, and they had their tracks. Back then, a lot of the DJs were known for the certain tracks they would play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they would play other stuff, they'd mix in other stuff, but they found this one track that's banging, nobody else has it, it was fucking great, and they would play it almost every show.
and then Shazam.
But yeah, but it was the aspect of like you would go to certain DJs because you knew they were going to play a couple of songs that you really wanted to hear that
Yeah.
nobody else had. So you did almost have that same thing as bands do. It's like you're going to hear certain songs. Same thing with DJs way back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Because, you know, back in the day, there were test pressings and white labels and
Yeah.
limited runs. And, you know, your record shop and your location may only have one of those white labels. And you happen to be there on delivery day on Tuesday, and you snatched it up.
Yeah.
No other DJs in the region are going to have that. You know, so yeah, but now in the digital age, that's pretty much gone away. I think what's replaced that is the guys that are pulling that in and using the digital software to remix it themselves, and they have their own special one that they are able to
version
remix
of
and
it.
play at their gig.
So do you
Well,
see
so-
heading more into the live remixes on stage, or are you
No,
already doing that?
you know, my feeling is I don't want to do the laptop thing. I want to stick with CDJs. That's
Yeah.
just how I feel. I like to actually DJ and, you know, beat match and not rely on laptops and that kind of thing.
Very
I
organic
don't want
feeling.
to. Yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I want to stick with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you play
But-
a song.
But I mean,
A,
like I said, I've gone more into the production side. So it's not to say I might, you know, work on something that I'll play at a gig, but I don't want to be doing it
So
really.
I'm interested on you going into this production side of things. Like, what are your tools, and what type of music do you see yourself leaning towards in that?
Well, I used to use Reason, but I got out of that and started using Ableton Live.
You know those work together, right?
They do, yeah, actually. Just the sound output, and I'm not I don't do mastering. That's really a whole other art form.
Oh, absolutely.
That I'm not even going to try.
I mean,
to do.
you walk into a mastering studio and you look at it's minimal equipment, but you don't know what any of it really does.
Oh yeah, and I just don't have an ear for that. You really have to have an ear.
You have to start young and hope you get an ear for it by the time you're like 35 to 40.
What's
So
a mastering
with that
studio?
said, the sound that I was able to get out of Ableton, it just sounded so much better than what I was getting out of Reason.
Oh, really?
And I'm sure it's probably just my lack of experience in the production side, but because I know guys that use Reason and they have released a ton of tracks that sound great, but then you got guys that are mastering the stuff for them too. But with Ableton Live, you can almost produce a track out of there and master it yourself, and it sounds really good. There's guys doing that. But again, they probably have a better ear for that.
It's
than
definitely
I do.
not what software you're using; is how you're using the software.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I love the Reason side of things. To me, that sounds great, but I like the user interface of Ableton a lot better. So my editing and everything comes over into that side of it.
Yeah.
But
Well, see, I always felt like, because I use Reason and Ableton too, and I always felt like Reason's more the instruments, and Ableton is like the recording studio. I would come up with a lot of ideas and my instrumentation in Reason, and then bring them over to Ableton and do that more as like being in the studio recording and production and stuff on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are two different things. Like writing the song and producing the song. Well, actually, you know what? When you're talking about electronic music, a lot of the production is happening as you're writing the song.
That's true.
You're tweaking each sound to make sure it fits in its own frequency ranges, and we're not having too much of overlaps. And that's a funny thing with when you look at music, like the things that are the most driven by having a pure sound. Like you have electronic music needs to be very pristine, but also like EQs in metal can be very important. Even though it sounds sludgy and chunky and whatnot, like you still got to pay a lot of attention to EQ on that one too.
Yeah.
And then if you're doing something for the radio, but some styles lean more to you can be a little looser, while other ones are tighter.
That's what she said.
Yeah, I was trying to hold together on that one too. Where are you going with that?
There goes my coaster. Never mind. I wanted to go back, so we kind of went left field for a second, but the comment we were making about the big club around here and whatnot, I think what's really sad because we know several people that play there, and they are really good DJs that play there. I think the sad part is those audience, they wouldn't know if the music was good or bad.
Yeah.
There's some killer DJs that play there and just kill it, but then there's some really shitty DJs that play and it's just shit, and the crowd doesn't notice a difference. And
yeah, you're right. That's true.
I think that's kind of a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
wow.
I
can't. Every time a
this
drink
is my
is poured,
fault.
it sounds like someone's peeing in the corner.
kind of wish
Yeah,
someone
so
was
does
being
that-
in the corner at
Is
this
there
point.
I'm
booze?
about to.
Is booze around here?
There's
Yeah.
booze. You want a glass?
We're pouring iced tea. We made some sun tea, remember?
Yeah. Sun tea.
What the fuck is sun tea?
Are you serious? You have not lived, Milo.
Is it like sun chips?
You put water in a jug outside on your porch in the sun with the tea bags in it and brews tea.
Said
And a
tea
goldfish,
bags.
right?
Tea bag. You just gotta tea bag that sun tea. That's all you gotta
Oh God!
do. You asked what it was.
Can you re-explain that?
So
Sun and tea bags.
what you're gonna do?
I don't want to do it.
No.
I don't want to do it.
I don't think you really do.
I thought I was kicked out a long time ago.
Talk about left
You said you were going to finish a drink, then you made another one, and
Well, thank God I did.
all right. Well, let's get back to your personal experience with things. What was one of your favorite shows you've done?
Probably my favorite was I got to play at Smart Bar up in Chicago in 2006.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean,
Who'd you play with?
I played the after party. Beat Manifesto played
Nice.
at the bar up top. I can't think of the name of it. It escapes me right now. But Smart Bar is underneath that one. But it's like a cathedral, venue.
Oh,
So I got to
so
play
very
there.
religious.
No. Yeah, you could say that.
You could only play
could say
Christian music, nothing secular. Right.
But that to me, that was probably a really cool thing because of so many house DJs in the industry, like the top level ones that have played there. And getting to play there was just kind of an honor to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Jeez.
that's cool.
Still haven't been. My sister lives in Chicago, and every time I'm in Chicago, it's like, man, I would love to go over to Smart Bar, and something always comes up.
Yeah.
It's normally booze. Me trying to figure out how to get back to her place.
Taking the wrong stop in the L train and
It's over.
Everything's over then, yeah. So that's your favorite show, but out of the respect for the venue type of thing, more so, right?
And just
who
being
they
able
draw.
to play. Probably
Yeah.
some of my favorite actual gigs were back in the day here, the after hours at Curly's.
Yeah.
We used to have some really good shows there. That was a good time. There was a good crowd here for after hours, and we would get several hundred people in there and just rocking all night. It was a lot of fun. I know we had 800 people for the one of the shows we did there. And
I'm really upset with this town and increasing the laws and making it very difficult for us to do after hours parties.
yeah, that's true.
South
It's
Florida.
it's definitely a different time now. Because even since Curly's, somebody took over that venue, a new owner, and they tried to resurrect the after hours, and they had me come in and play, and it just didn't work. There just wasn't really the scene here at the time to support an after hours.
Well, but that's the thing. You can't do an after hour thing and just do it for a little bit and think that everybody's gonna come back into it. We're used to not having an after hours. It's something you'd have to do for at least a year or two for people to catch on.
Yeah, that's true. It does take a while to get the word out and to get people coming in.
Yeah, because you also just don't want anyone coming
But
in, I
things
guess.
like that are so
No, you do.
short-lived here where we are.
Yeah.
That you might only have a year to prove it, to fail or not. And sometimes it just takes a while to build things up and get it going. And
What was that one venue I went with you to that you did the after hours thing? That was
by the Meadow Gold.
Yeah. We went upstairs and you did something
that
at
was
4
a really
in the morning.
good. Yeah, that was a fun little venue. That was it looked promising. For after hours, it was a pretty good turnout in there. And
But it wasn't legal though, was it?
I have no idea. I wasn't
I don't think it
involved
was,
with actually
yeah.
running the event. I just played, so I don't even know it. But yeah, that didn't last too long. I think
Like
there were
6,
so many
8
people
months?
around there that it seemed to bring a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And it was a very interesting mix too because you had half the people there for the music and then the other half was just young kids lined up on the walls doing X and Molly and stuff.
Yeah,
and that
it
was sad,
definitely
but-
more rave.
And that's always when I'm I find the owners and I'm like, hey, this is going on, and
Oh,
we
it's
need
kinda
to
obvious,
start
like-
IDing, or
Right.
Yeah.
I'm telling everybody this isn't where we're going anymore.
Right.
I don't want the unwanted drama.
Yeah. you're right.
Well, it's very difficult too in supporting something like this, and then not getting the Molly and the X and the young kids and stuff like that. And it's very unfortunate too because I think another thing that we need here in Tulsa more is all ages shows. You know what I mean? And then you're going to get all these young kids have nothing else to do. They don't know what else to do, but bring in that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, but
Yeah, that's tough, to do an all ages show because you do have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of responsibility you're taking on because some of those, if you're doing, that are 16-year-olds showing up or whatever, and that's just a lot of liability.
And they're also
I think
the
as
ones-
I've gotten a little older, I'm more catering to a little bit of the older crowd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Well, and that's also the same demographic that's going to abuse things, not respect things, and do things inappropriately and get into trouble.
Yeah.
Even the older people that do stuff like that, they kind of seem to kind of go, "Oh, I get it," and keep between boundaries. But when you're that young, you don't know the boundaries,
Right.
And you're going to get out of hand and cause issues.
Sure, and trying to do shows at different venues. We're trying to do a nice, classy house music night. You don't want these young kids coming in that are just tagging up the restroom, and the venue owners get pissed off, because your crowd's coming in and ruining their establishment with that. So, I don't know. You got to kind of hit a certain demographic that's not going to behave that way and ruin your night or bring, you know what I mean?
But still be open to, not narrow yourself down to a target market, but kind of
Sure.
still keep it open. But it's kind of
it's a tightrope walk, I think, a little bit.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's what's really great about Hey Mambo, though, because that's a established
Yeah.
event,
And it seems to be really the only people that really care and really want to be there
Right.
show up. So
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
It's a family. We know everybody who comes to these shows.
I don't know,
And that's always fun.
That's been the thing, but recently we've had a lot of people showing up that I'm like, I don't even know, I don't recognize these people, and they turn out to be really great people that are like, wow, we didn't know about this place, we love the music, and so it's really good that when you experience that and you get new people out there that will come back. And
Dude, you got their digits, right?
Well, see, that's the thing too, and I was kind of on the fence with that one because we've done it for so long, and I've always loved it because it was just our family there, and it was almost like a little private thing we would do every month, and
Private public party.
Yeah, the private pub. Well, nobody would come, so it was
The
just
triple
awesome. It
P.
was great, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that, I kept wanting. We need more people here. We need more people here. But at the same time, I'm like, I like our little private parties, but more people need to know about this. More people need to come and listen to it. It's great.
Monthly. It's
There's plenty of
great
space
setup,
for more people to be
inside,
there.
outside,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, more
quit
people
being
sitting
selfish.
outside and smoking cigarettes, maybe not. So all the non-smokers, please come.
Please
to,
come inside.
please come to Hey Mambo next week.
But I like how you guys always put a speaker on the outside too for
Sure,
the
yeah.
smokers.
That's
and
a
the-
really
Well,
cool thing,
and I think a lot of people, and I myself also enjoy venues that have an outdoor area. I mean, who doesn't like to be outdoors under the stars at night and hear good house music?
Yeah, the 5 we
So,
can see downtown.
That. So the people that choose to sit outside, we want to make sure they can hear the music, so we like to put a speaker out there for them.
And that's
I
the
love
thing
that
too.
too.
You go outside to smoke a cigarette, and that's the one thing about this place. You go outside to smoke a cigarette, and your whole intention is just smoke a cigarette, come back in. But you get so lost in conversation and talking to people that hours go by, and you're like, I'm still here.
Yeah. And when we were playing at, used to play at 209.
Yes.
We started setting up outside because it was just the weather was awesome. You're out there playing at night, and
Nobody was inside.
Yeah, because
So
and
it's
that's
too
as
nice,
venues have changed over the years to non-smoking. That's really driven a lot of people outdoors. When there's an outdoor option, who wouldn't want to be outdoors?
Yeah.
Especially if
Exactly.
the DJ sets up outdoors.
I
That's
loved it
where
when you
everyone's
guys
gonna
started
be.
playing
It's the best,
outside.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Friday, you guys are playing outdoors.
That's right.
As
we
long as the
are,
weather
yeah.
permits. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
I think we're gonna be okay.
And it's a fantastic patio. That
Yeah, it really
I
is.
do enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe a little too spacious for
It is, yeah.
for how many people generally ever make it to that bar.
Yeah.
It never fills and is a packed thing.
But
at that
that's
bar,
good though,
it's
'cause
nice.
I
you
prefer
never really
that.
want to
No
feel
space.
like pressed up against people.
Especially
you have enough
outside.
room. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to feel
Well,
like
I don't
trapped.
think-
Like
with
that,
people.
like that clip in what was that movie where he's,
Blade.
Wow. Really?
Just remember the opening scene in Blade, the party and everybody's dancing. Right, never mind. Sorry.
You've probably seen 2 and 3 as
No,
well,
I was-
haven't you?
Shut up.
I was talking about dodgeball. When he's
Oh,
trying
Dodgeball.
to get the sweaty chest scene all up on you.
Oh, that's a funny movie, yeah. I never want that to happen.
We could
Yeah,
make
you do,
that
whatever.
happen.
No, I don't want to make that happen. I'm gonna.
I'm just saying we could.
I don't want to. Thank you.
I got a
Thank
phone
you,
in
though,
my
Milo.
pocket.
Oh god. No.
Time to raise the roof.
Speaking of which, and going back to
Sweat on me.
the club that we're not naming. That is the other thing that I really irritates me is when my friends play there, and I really want to go and listen to them. You've played there, and Falkirk and everywhere else. I love going to watch them play. But there's just this weird element about that club. It'll
There
be
really is.
packed, and I'll be walking through, you really shoulder to shoulder with people. You have to force yourself through, and you always end up kind of rubbing up against one guy, and he's like, "What the fuck?
Yeah,
What are you doing?
you're right.
I'm standing here," and it's like, yeah, but do you realize there's lots of people, and I kind of have to nudge to get by you, why are you
Yeah.
fucking touching me? And it's like,
Yeah.
Seriously?
I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
not
that's
to,
true.
honestly.
yeah, I really didn't want to, but
Yeah, I
But
agree.
now that
I
you're
have
complaining,
seen
I'll
that,
touch you
but-
more.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's always funny when people go out to a crowded club and they expect to not get brushed up or
Yeah.
touched. Really, come on.
I almost
you're
think
in the
that
wrong
those.
place.
I think
Yeah.
almost those people are waiting. They're just sitting there going, "This guy's gonna come. This guy's
those
gonna
are
come. Here comes. Oh
troublemakers.
yeah, what's up? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm waiting for this altercation
Yeah.
to happen.
There are a lot of people just waiting for you to touch them. Justin.
just me, just
They-
me.
Just you
yeah.
only.
They want you to touch them so bad.
They can't even wait for next Friday.
Oh great! Now there's gonna be a bunch of guys out on Friday going,
Trying to touch
"What's up,
you."
bro? You touched me? You touched me? What's up?"
You want my
What?
sweaty five? I got
Yeah.
a sweaty five for you.
You were walking through, then you pushed on me. You pushed on me. You pushed on me. You almost spilled my drink. You
It could
pushed on
almost
me.
go
You pushed
either
on
way,
me.
really.
Aziz, anybody?
We could
get
have a whole
Aziz
different
from Zion?
crowd wing of people that want you to touch them, other than just to start shit. You know what I mean?
Jesus. This went downhill.
A whole bunch of other
fast.
dudes.
Yeah.
This
They'll be
went
waiting for you.
downhill fast.
Oh yeah,
It always does.
I know how to find those dudes. Let's call them this week and get Justin touching different
Christ.
dudes.
Let's see him touching all the dudes.
Uh,
How do we derailed?
how many dudes?
You started it.
How many dudes
Can
do you
Justin
want
touch
to
him one night?
touch this weekend?
I think that's more of a jitsu
It
question.
will be Friday night.
Jitsu,
yeah.
Jitsu's in on it. We're running a tally. Like, how
Jesus.
many numbers Jitsu?
Everybody's
Milo,
teaming
and
up on me.
No, that
Can
was
Justin
not my
touch Friday
thing.
night? Not you. I'm saying we're making it a number for him to touch. Not
Okay.
you.
Well,
I know you're
only-
not going to do that.
only if.
Just
with-
like, I don't touch anyone.
Only if with every number you guys have to take a shot that night. Ooh,
Wow.
yeah. Turn it back
I'm down.
on you.
I'm
yeah.
down.
I'll do
I'll
it.
totally do
You
that.
didn't say
I
what
don't-
the shot. You
Seriously?
didn't
I mean,
say
you're
what the
buying,
shot had to
right?
be.
Right. Yeah, we've already
Water
agreed.
is not allowed.
Well,
Now because you said that, it's Jaeger. Go fuck yourself. Yeah.
at least you didn't say Fireball.
I love everybody cringes when I say
Stuff.
Jaeger.
Jaeger's like
I
Tussin.
like it.
It is. It really
Yeah,
is.
I can get down on some Jaeger.
Uh,
So, how many dudes do you want to touch? And how many do we think we can?
Do we think he can? I'm not
none
aware.
none actually want to touch, but if you guys have to take a shot every time I do it, this might be a thing.
As you're going to touch 300 people Friday
So
night.
Friday and Saturday night, come out to
Yes.
see how many people. Or
Please come up and
dudes,
touch me while I'm performing. And
yeah.
let's get them
How
drunk.
many
off their
guys
ass.
can touch Justin this weekend?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And no one touched Jitsu.
He will
He's not
be
into
at
that.
Yeti on Friday and Hey Mambo on
I
Saturday.
love how this derails so fast.
Yeah.
So you brought a
Some
mix
good
to
marketing. So
It
I
really
like
is.
your marketing. Yeah.
play? Yeah.
I know how to get people to a club. Get them to touch Justin.
I would scare people away. That's not, no.
But maybe the entertainment will be the rest of us three being so fucking hammered
Jesus
from dudes
Christ.
touching you. But I'm gonna go with like
I'm okay with being drunk.
one
with dudes
one
touching
shot
Justin.
per
Wow.
Touching
dude
dudes.
touching
Wow.
him. You can't touch him 5 times and
Right, one-
expect 5 shots. No, one
Good
touch.
rule. That's a good rule. It's one shot
But-
per dude.
But
that
One
touches
shot
you.
per dude.
touching me, like touch my arm, like that counts, right? Like they don't have to touch me in weird places.
No,
like,
they don't
okay.
have to molest you.
Thank God.
No.
I'm just
You're
saying,
welcome.
I don't care how they touch you.
We don't care where or
So
how. or when.
Jitsu, where'd your name come from? Let's change this really fast.
Yeah, let's get back to that.
Please, let's do something.
You used to
field,
make some moves
Yeah.
behind the decks there.
Yeah, when I got into DJing, I lived in Hawaii, and
Yeah.
I was big into jiu-jitsu at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I just kind of shortened it and used jitsu.
Well, it was really funny because
But you didn't do karate kicks to like
As
beat
he's
Matt.
playing.
Just a couple of judo chops there. Yeah.
Is that all?
the funny story behind that, I've known you for years, and I've always just known you as Chris Jitsu. And after you got married, Christina changed her name on Facebook, and opened up my Facebook and say, "Who the fuck is this bitch?" I don't know this girl.
We
And
don't
I was
know
like, had to look at her
Wilkins.
pictures, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's Christina."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shouldn't
like,
that be
oh.
Christina
Well, yeah,
Jitsu?
Yeah. I don't think honestly I don't think I knew your last name until you got married
Yeah,
because
that was
I've
my
always
point.
just known you.
That was
Yeah.
my point.
I didn't either.
Yeah. I didn't really throw my name around a lot.
Other
Well-
than
Part of the
Jitsu.
witness protection program didn't allow for it.
Now you're gonna have
That's
to
why
after
you're
this
in
podcast.
Oklahoma. I moved to Oklahoma
Justin
from
just
Hawaii.
dropped a lot of last
Yeah.
names.
To get away from this last name, which is also not my last name.
Yeah.
Wilkins.
Wilkins. His name is Wilkins.
So, how many tracks do you bring to a night?
Well, I've got my CD book, which is probably has 50 CDs in it. So, I bring enough that I can look through and, have variety.
Is there something like anything visual or very obvious in a crowd, like that you kind of take, like they're doing this or not doing this, that means I need to switch? Is there anything like that, any visual cues that you're like, okay, this needs to happen now? Or
yeah, sure. I mean, if you're playing a gig and you're playing a certain type of music that isn't really working, you've got to kind of switch it up. You know, if like it's too slow or too mellow, you might want to switch it up. And I've got kind of a commercially crowd in here right now that might change later, so I'm going to play kind of some electro-y type stuff. And so yeah, I mean, you kind of have to play to the environment and what the crowd is at the time, which does change, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is a very interesting point to bring up, because as you're saying, you know, coming in prepared with what you've worked on, the set you've laid out, and then being able to switch it up and work with what's, you know, happening at the club at that time.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up an interesting point too. The fact of like so many of my friends and Jitsu included don't prepare. They can do on the fly. They're
right.
You know, they can change at any moment. And I don't know if it's because I came from rock and roll and I love having set lists and stuff like that. Like I've always
came from rock and roll,
but no.
Well, I've came from a lot of different things, I guess.
I didn't come from anything.
Well, but my point is though, I still like.
He first got off on rock and roll.
That's probably
I still get off
true.
on rock and roll. But no, I like to have my set list, and I like to do it that way. And it's way different than what you guys do. And again, why I don't call myself
You really
a DJ,
don't vary
but
from your set list, though. Usually,
I do.
or do you?
Absolutely.
Do you?
I absolutely can. I have a fail-safe of just being able to go, this is not working, change. But it's a different outlook that I have on it. I look at it as I'm going to create a story, and I'm going to see if I can make the story happen. It's almost like filming a movie. And writing and filming a movie, like you're set in your ways. You want to get from point A to point B, and you're hoping that you're good enough as a storyteller to get the audience to follow. And you fall on your face and you learn different techniques and whatnot to make a better set list, but it's way different than what you guys do, and which is right on the spot changing and doing things. But
which must take years of practice and know how to do that.
Well, it's really hard. It's tough to read a crowd because you know, the crowd changes so frequently, and so it can be really tough. But you just kind of wing it and see what works.
Right,
you know?
right. Which is cool because, again, I must take experience to get to that point to where you can say, okay, this isn't working. I've got this. I could do this, or switch it up really quick to where.
Well, and especially when you're not relying on the cover of an album to tell you what an album is.
But the other
and
aspect
that's funny
of it,
because people would come up and say, "Hey, man, that track is so awesome. What is that?" I don't know, but I can tell you what the cover.
I'll tell you what the picture
I know
looks
what
like.
the artwork
looks like. It's yellow with some black and
It's a blue one
That
with the
is too
bubbles.
But so that must be interesting to be going from vinyl to digital and knowing, like how you said, you would manage your tracks by the way the album covers looked. Then too, that must have been a.
But he actually like tags his stuff now. It says yellow with black print, blue with bubbles, and so.
So, what is your actual equipment setup that you prefer right now?
You know, I had I bought, you know, just going back to the beginning when I first started with records, I bought Technics 1200s. I special ordered them.
Right.
This is when I lived in Hawaii. I special ordered them, and they were shipped from
Creme de la
Japan.
creme.
Wow.
Well, when I got them, you know, from Japan, and I opened them up, and they were 1210s, and they were black. And I said, "Oh, I've never even seen these. I've never heard of a 1210 back then at the time.
So
you hadn't seen any around Hawaii." And I thought, "What are these?" So, you know, that's what I had up until about a year ago when I sold, and they were just perfect. You know, once I sold those because I didn't use them because I have CDJ 1000s I've been using.
Right.
Now I sold those, and I've moved on to CDJ 900 Nexus, which has a really, really nice screen. Really beautiful screen.
You have a beautiful screen that shows you track length and
that's right.
and
you
volume levels and whatnot.
Well, if you use Rekordbox from Pioneer to organize your music and have it read your music, it will create the waveform that displays on the CDJ 900 Nexus.
Right.
And it looks just like you're using a laptop, like you're using Serato. You get that same waveform display without having
cool.
a laptop to have to look over, you know, to the crowd.
And it has to be way easier in my mind, it'd be way easier than reading a vinyl and making
Well, you
sure
can't read a
that there
vinyl.
is
The
a
thing is,
light
well,
to see.
that's kind of true, but back when I used to play vinyl, because now, you want the waveform so you know when there's a breakdown coming up, because
Yeah.
you don't want to mix breakdown and a
We see what's
breakdown with
coming
two
ahead
tracks.
of time. Yeah.
With vinyl, you could still look. You can look down
Yeah,
at the
dude.
vinyl and look at the pattern on the record and see when there's a breakdown.
You
And
get
that's
a
what
light
you
on
used
the
to do.
opposite side
Yeah, and
of
that's
the vinyl, and hopefully you have that.
yeah.
But,
so you can definitely tell that.
Yeah, you could tell it on there, but it's easier to read a waveform and
Sure.
to see the volume swells than it is
Yeah.
to read a vinyl.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. You could tell though. Actually, on the record, you could see where.
Oh yeah.
Well, when they were printed, yeah, there's a little difference.
Yeah, you can look at a vinyl and totally see where a breakdown is just by on the reflection of the lighting.
Well,
And
that's
again, I was
another thing that
asking
brings up
Jitsu
a good
that.
point is going back to the story where I was playing that gig out in the middle of nowhere outside is while I was playing that, I was using records at the time on turntables, is there were these huge bugs landing on top of the records
Oh my gosh!
out there, and they were spinning around, and I would have to brush them off before they would hit the
needle.
needle. And so that was kind of a challenge. And in fact, when I got home that night and I pulled my records out that I'd used, there were a couple of bugs smashed in between.
That had caught the needle.
Yeah, well, they
Or
just got
just,
into my
yeah,
record
too-
tray
yeah.
and got
We're just
smashed
putting it
between the
back, yeah.
records. Yeah.
Wow.
So now you
That's
play
hilarious.
bug music.
That's a new thing.
Yeah.
All right. Just odd question. In your whole years of doing this, has there been any points of knowledge that you've come across that you're like, this is really amazing to know, that other people should know this kind of thing?
What comes to mind is that a lot of DJs they focus on the beat matching of two songs, and that is important, but there's the phrasing, and it kind of like it took me a while, and then I had a light bulb moment where it hit that you can beat match two songs together, and if they're not phrased, it sounds like shit. It's not going to work.
And
You've
by
got
phrasing,
to phrase
you
them.
mean like a phrase may be an 8-bar thing or a 4-bar thing,
Well,
or
yeah.
even a 2-bar
Well,
thing.
you've got to drop where the one beat on one song
Yeah.
is with the one beat on the one you're bringing it into.
Exactly.
You've got to phrase it properly. Otherwise, it can be me match. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and
you
based
know?
on the composition of the style you're playing, there's definite phrases. Some of them
Yeah.
are like 3/8 or whatever it is, but there's a
Sure.
phrasing involvement, like a rotation, and
Yeah,
you got to know what you're
absolutely.
playing and being able to play them in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And say the phrase on one song goes for a full bar, but the phrase on the song you're bringing in goes half. Well, you can't
Well,
bring it in beat matching on the third.
Well, phrasing
Yeah,
is phrasing
Or
is technically
it'll
like
mess it
Yeah.
mess it all up. Your numbers
You're right.
are wrong.
Absolutely.
and phrasing technically in a house is how many measures?
That's an interesting point. Is the DJ that taught me in Hawaii, or when I lived in Hawaii, he was a very well-respected underground house DJ in Hawaii and in San Francisco. And I was lucky, that I was involved with the club, and I had his, showing me what to do. He taught me to count 4 sets of 8, but I've heard other DJs that do different measures. So it's
Generally
just all
what-
what you are used to. But in my mind,
Right.
I'm always
Well-
counting 4 sets of 8. So
Well-
that every 32 measures, you've got to change up. You've got
I
an
normally
instrument
hear
coming out,
32 or
one coming
64.
in.
Well,
So you
and-
stick
and,
with that. You're stuck with that the whole time then, since you've learned
Yeah,
it.
Well-
I mean that's just what my brain is now programmed
Right.
for
Yeah.
all these years to
But it-
do, and that's just what I do
And you still
naturally
do.
now.
Yeah.
If you look at a lot of house music, though, you have the intro, and generally on 33, they do hit a change.
Right.
You
You've
know,
got an
that is a
instrument
big
coming
thing,
out
so-
that's leaving the song, or you've got a new one coming in.
Yeah.
You've got a change going on.
So, definitely 4/8 is generally a phrase in house music. That's
Sure.
kind of what I've learned, too.
Yeah.
So,
Was moving forward from there till now, do you think that you've changed much in styles as far as preparing for things, doing shows? I mean, as far as what you originally learned, or like you're saying, you've just stuck with?
You've obviously had a setup change from going analog
Well, a
to
setup
digital.
change, yeah.
But outside of that,
I mean, just your basics that you just have stuck with those.
Not really. I mean, I keep with the same basics of when I played vinyl. It's the same principle, and since I don't really use a laptop, I just use the CDJs. it's all the same principle to me.
principles,
So I'm,
Okay.
it's all the same.
I think the only thing the one thing that I've learned, only doing this for 4 years, but one thing I've definitely learned getting into this as you develop as a DJ is I think your taste matures.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that I was playing 3 years ago is way different than what I'm playing now. You know what I mean? I finally
Sure,
am getting
yeah.
more developed and more into it. I'm like, okay, that was kind of crap. What was I doing? I'm going to play this stuff now. And I think
Yeah.
maybe as developing DJ, that's one thing that definitely changes.
Yeah, sure.
What is your craziest moment that you've experienced as a DJ?
My craziest, I haven't had a lot of crazy experiences, but I would say one thing that comes to mind is I was booked to DJ at it was like an outdoor rave, kind of a renegade party, unauthorized out in the middle of nowhere in the country here. And I get out there, like I don't even know where we were. We barely found the place, but we get out there and it's my time to play. I go up and I'm playing, and the county sheriff shows up. He comes up and he sticks his finger in my chest and tells me he's going to take me to jail
while you're playing.
While I'm playing, yeah.
Wow.
So he
This
tells
is so
me,
weird.
shut the music off. I shut it off, and he's sticking his finger in my chest, telling me he's going to take me to jail. I said, well, I just got booked to play. This is not my gig.
You have the
my
music
event.
shut off, and
I
all
had to
these
shut
people
it
are like,
off.
what the hell's
Yeah,
going on?
yeah,
The cops
yeah.
are up there.
Oh yeah, he's
And-
telling me he's taking me to jail. So I'm, if I don't shut it off, and so then, I say, okay, the sheriff leaves, and I turn it over to the next DJ, and from there, me and a couple of friends, we kept telling the DJ, hey man, we can't hear you. You need to turn it up a little louder. just kind of fucking with him. But what was funny is he was like, oh okay, and he kept turning it up louder and louder.
wow.
And we were just like, wow, okay.
So how far away do you think the sheriff made it before he came back?
I don't know.
Was he still there?
Yeah.
Well, did he come back? Like,
I don't know. We stuck around for a while. But
that you were like, this is my cue to leave.
yeah, because
Yeah.
the sheriff knew me. He thought that was my deal, so I wasn't going to stick around too long.
Yeah.
I think it's my turn to pass the baton here.
Right. All right.
That's too
So,
funny.
Jitsu, where are you playing again coming up next? Is like you have a gig Friday, right?
Yeah, this Friday, playing with Justin.
With
here.
Jay Brown
at the
here.
Yeti,
Yeah, playing at the Yeti. We're playing outside there.
Sweet.
And then on Saturday, the next night, playing at Hey Mambo for our Be Yourself monthly, the last Saturday of every month with Turk.
Do you have anything else planned? Do you have anything else coming up?
Just our monthly at this time. I get gigs here and there as I get booked. So.
I do kind of want to pitch one idea because you
Yeah.
and me are very big on lights and lasers and stuff like that. And you've seen the shows that I've done, which are the kind of like pre-staged lighting and everything like that. How would you feel about next year, because it would take us that long to do production, of doing a show together to where we kind of know what we're going to play, and then we actually map the lights out and do just a full show, you and me. Because I remember last time I did it for my birthday, which is a really funny Jitsu story, because, what took me...
I want to hear
We love
that.
funny Jitsu stories.
Because it took me 8 months to put together, an hour set, doing the
I
full
remember
lighting
that,
and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Right.
I work very hard on it. And it was my birthday, and of course, I have you play because you're one of my favorite DJs and whatnot. We get down to the end. He looks at me and he goes, "Why didn't I get all these lights?
Yeah. It's like, why did you? get this
Why'd you
whole-
hawk them?"
Well,
and I'm
and I think you kind of paid me back after that, because the gigs we played together since then, I was blinded by the end of the night. I couldn't see.
I wonder why.
When I'm playing, I couldn't even see if there was a crowd out there.
I always have like
was,
one light shining
Right in
like
his
the
this.
sun
eyeballs.
was in my eyes.
How about Jitsu? You bring your favorite lasers for you, and then
It's just gonna be a laser fight, but no. I'm thinking next year, let's work together. Let's create a show, and then let's design a whole lighting thing on it, and do, instead of me just doing something. I think it'd be really fun to work with you and do a whole night of it and stage the lighting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
definitely.
So, yeah.
So you have a love of lasers as
Oh,
well.
that's
Let's
my
talk about that
favorite.
for a second.
I love lighting. Lighting's important, but my favorite
is.
is the lasers, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it used to be lasers in the club scene were just like the basic red laser, but
Yeah.
now, they've advanced so far. You've got full color lasers that
Oh,
just
yeah.
are spectacular.
Green.
Right.
Absolutely.
They do absolutely add to the aesthetics of the show, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely.
It really
But that was again going back to what I was talking about, doing rock and roll, and then going into electronic music. That
Wait,
was
you did rock and roll before this?
Oh yes.
I had no idea.
Don't look on YouTube.
Totally going to now. You shouldn't have said that.
I have seen some of those.
Yes. No, I wouldn't. Yeah.
And you were so cute.
But no, that was a big thing too, because being forced behind decks and not being that whole thing, like I felt like there was a production value that needed to happen, and that's why I got really into getting the lights. It was a very production thing. I missed having a production. I missed having an influence on the crowd in different ways, and that's why I went just ape shit on it and bought too much stuff, and that's why.
And then used it all at once and blinded us all.
Yes, I want people to have seizures at my shows. It's great.
Well, that's a good point. I've played shows before where there was no lights, and the lighting is really kind of important. It sets, on top of the music, which is kind of number one, but the lights, really add to an atmosphere in an event. My personal experience, I don't like to go clubbing or to play a gig where it's really bright. Yeah. At least not in the DJ booth. I don't like a spotlight on me personally. But, I've been to clubs where it's just too bright. People don't want to go clubbing and be in the spotlight and be bright. They like it to be kind of dim and dismal. And
it's got to be used correctly, but electronic music does definitely seem to be audio and visual at the same time. Yeah, like there's something that can be added to it. But yeah, let's cut off there. I thank you so much for being our first guest.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're a pleasure to talk to.
Absolute
pleasure.
We'll definitely have you back on. This has been awesome.